Hi, welcome back to another Theory Thursday. In the previous videos, I talked about distance in music and how to apply those to making a scale, an arpeggio, and a chord. Today we're going to talk more in depth about the major-minor relationship as well as perfect intervals and chords. As you hopefully know by now, and if you don't, you can check out previous Theory Thursday videos, intervals are important for making chords, harmonizing, and sight reading. What you may not know at this point is how an interval could be major, minor, or perfect. Sometimes they can also be augmented or diminished, but we're not going to really be touching on that today. Instead, let's start with the intervals that we already know and talk about whether they're major, minor, or perfect. A second, a third, a sixth, and a seventh can be either major or minor. This is another place where the half steps and whole steps come in handy. Let's take a look at intervals in the key of C.
A major second will be C to D, or a whole step, whereas a minor second you play a half step. A major third will be C to E, or 2 whole steps. A minor third will be 3 half steps. A major sixth will be 4.5 steps away, whereas a minor sixth will be 4 steps away. A major seventh will be 5.5 steps away, whereas a minor will be 5 steps away.
You've probably noticed the pattern that the easiest way to think of the difference between a major and a minor is that a minor is just a half step lower than a major. Why is this important? Let's say you're composing a song and you want to make it a sad song. Minor keys make for a better sad song because they have a little more of a sad sound to them. Just lower your C major chord a half step and ta-da, you've got a C minor. You also will then use the C minor scale to be composing from. In your song, instead of playing a regular E, anytime you encounter an E, you're going to play the E flat instead. That way you won't have what's called dissonance, which is a yucky sound. There's plenty of other applications for knowing the difference between major and minor, so start to memorize the differences in distance or the sounds. So let's talk about the other intervals, a fourth, a fifth, an octave, and a unison. Why perfect? Well, scientifically speaking, it's because they have a frequency ratio, which is a simple whole number. Musically speaking, in simplest terms, if we raise or lower it a half a step, it kind of becomes a different interval or it makes a yucky sound. So, for example, if you raise a unison, it just becomes a minor second. If you lower a fourth a half a step, well, that's a third. If you raise the octave, you get what's referred to as a ninth. And then there's this. This is known as a tritone. It's between a fourth and a fifth. Fun fact, this tritone was actually banned for composition in church music during the Renaissance era because of how unpleasant it sounds to our ear. What are some of the other practical applications of knowing the intervals and whether they're major, minor, or perfect? Start to memorize the sounds. It's going to make it easier for you to play music by ear. Let's say, for example, you're trying to sound out the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow. When you listen for somewhere, you'll think that that's a perfect octave, and you'd be right. When you go into the O, you'll know it's a second down. Ver is a third down, and so on. If you're just thinking in your head and you don't hear it, way up high, well, you might think, hey, that's the same as the first part, somewhere. But actually, way up is going to be a different interval. Here's a little challenge for you. Play through the first part of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. Use your new knowledge of intervals and what they sound like to help you find what the notes are. What kind of interval is it? And is it major, minor, or perfect? Another way that you can apply this leads us right into talking about harmonic progressions. A harmonic progression can be defined as a goal-directed succession of chords. In other words, we use chords to take us from one musical place to another musical place. Most songs want to go back to the tonic or starting note. There are lots of chord progressions, but we're going to be focusing on one of the strongest and therefore one of the most common progressions, 1-4-5-1. Remember the perfect intervals? The perfect intervals on the scale happen to make good roots for strong chord progression. Remember from a previous video how we make a triad? To make a major triad, we're going to take one major third from the root to the third, a major third from the third to the fifth, and stack them all on top of each other. You can also think of this as root, third, fifth. Let's use the key of G. To make the progression, we're going to start with a major triad built on the tonic of the key. Then we move to the major triad built on the fourth note of the key. Then we'll make a major triad built on the fifth note of the key. Then we're going to move back to the major triad built on the 1. Let's take a look at it on the piano. We're going to start with a major triad built on G. Move to a major triad built on C. Then move to a major triad built on D. That's going to want to draw us back to the tonic, which is G. If we want to add the 5-7 chord, all we have to do is add a seventh on top of our triad. We're using this chord, which is called the 5-7 chord, otherwise known as a dominant 7. In this case, it's D major plus a minor 7th interval, which is placed on C. It sounds like this. And that is going to want to draw us back even more strongly than the regular 5 chord. Oftentimes we use a variation. It uses an inversion of each chord rather than moving your whole hand each time. The same notes are going to be used for each chord, but they'll be scrambled up. This is much easier to reach. So why is it important to learn these? Well, this is the basis for a great number of harmonizations for a lot of songs in all sorts of different styles. It could be country, pop, classical, worship, traditional, rock, even blues and jazz. Obviously, other chord progressions are available, as I said before, and certain genres are actually going to depend on different types of progressions. For example, in jazz, a 2-5-1 progression is going to be more common. So, how can we apply this to our daily routine? Well, hopefully you've been practicing the scale, arpeggio, and chord exercise that you were able to learn from the previous video. Now, at the end of that, instead of just ending on the tonic chord, add your 4, 5, 5-7, and then finally back to the tonic again. It'll sound like this. Well, that's it for Theory Thursdays. As always, please comment any questions and I'll do my very best to clarify for you. Have a musical day!